Welcome to Zen Warrior Conversations. My name is Sam Morris, creator of Zen Warrior Training. And today I have as my guests, Jeffrey Platts and Vanessa Petronelli. They are a married couple, and each one of them I could interview individually, and we could do an entire podcast on each of them individually. However, I thought it'd be fun to have both of them together and to experience their dynamic. And I'm going to read their bios here so you can get to know them. Jeffrey Platts is a men's coach who is passionate about helping single men own and express their value through their relationships and their purpose. With over 23 years of personal study and transformational training and a decade as a coach and teacher, he has led over 200 workshops and retreats on personal growth. Holy shit. Dating and communication. That's a lot of retreats and workshops.
Not all retreats, but yeah.
Together with his wife and co-facilitator Vanessa, they have created a transformational 8-week training for single men in their 30s and 40s, helping them prepare for partnership and attract their own well-matched woman. Jeffrey's work and writing has been featured in the Huffington Post, Washington Post, ABC News, Authentic Man Program, AskMen.com, and the Good Men Project. He brings a rich, results-based toolbox of insights and experiences to his facilitation, integrating his adventures as DJ, amateur stand-up comedian, salsa dancer, yoga teacher, and world traveler. Half of those things I didn't know. Vanessa Petronelli, a former model, actress, singer, and yoga teacher, is now teaching, speaking, and writing about the powerful impact of accessing higher levels of consciousness and awakening Hollywood as the CEO and founder of Soul Aligned Success. She works with and supports high-performance actors, directors, writers, musicians, and producers to embody and lead from their soul, to find balance and fulfillment through their entire lives. Vanessa and her work have been featured on Good Morning America, Parents Magazine, KTLA, Your Morning Show Canada, MSN, ABC News, Access Hollywood, Glamour, Collective Evolution, Elephant Journal, Good Morning La La Land, and more. That is an impressive resume, you two. They both live in sunny San Diego with their rescue dog, Leo, who I had the pleasure of meeting over Zoom not too long ago. And it's such a pleasure to have the two of you here. God damn, that's a good sounding resume the two of you have got. Holy smokes.
I'm almost like blushing here. I think that part needs to be cut out.
I'm impressed. I'm like, what have I got?
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's just 200 total workshops, seminars, retreats. The description
just a small number. Yeah, still. Come on, geez.
Yeah.
So happy to be here with you guys today. So one thing that I wanted to jump right into, since this is this is the era that we're all in, this is the thing that most people are thinking about in some way, shape, or form. We might be tired of thinking about it, but we have to think about it anyway, is life during COVID time. Mm-hmm. And I want to start with you, Jeffrey. Well, both of you can jump in anywhere, of course, but with dating in the era of COVID, isolation, what are you finding, and what are you finding are the challenges, and what are you finding are maybe also some of the benefits of dating online? What is this looking like, the dating world, for you right now?
Yeah, so what I've noticed, anticipated, but also have tracked, in the past, 2 months, let's say, since it's really kind of started to become real for everybody around the world, definitely in the US, is the challenges are obviously people that are single and live by themselves. That is its own lifestyle shift to navigate, especially if you had an office job, you had, you went to yoga class, you had an active lifestyle in the real world outside, adjusting to being home by yourself predominantly, right? Yes, Zoom and FaceTime and Facebook messaging and text messaging and all these things are great and necessary. I think people are doing the right thing by staying connected, and some people actually claim they feel more connected with people now, ironically enough.
In what respect? I'm curious. Let's jump into that a little bit.
Yeah, I would say more connected in the sense of like, they've reconnected with people that they otherwise would not have, like older friends, or they've made more of an effort to focus on communication. Because here the thing is too, is like with FaceTime, with Zoom, you're almost, for the most part, forced to actually have conversations. Whereas prior to COVID, a lot of texting, emojis, maybe you go out and do something together as an activity, but you're not actually talking with each other or to each other. Does that make sense? Like you go for a walk, you go for a run, you go for a bike ride or whatever. You're not necessarily face to face with the person. So that's one, not an overwhelming benefit.
Interesting. So in other words, there's sort of a more intentional container that gets created by, and I'm thinking of it. I've actually discovered, many times that it's like with Zoom, it actually kind of forces you to speak one at a time and not be sort of speaking over each other, and it actually sort of forces you to be a little bit more intentional about your communication. That's
100%.
very interesting. Yeah.
Like even like the dinner party that we did, the Zoom dinner party that we did, that was one thing I noticed.
Pretty fruitful for me in a way. We don't have to go into that, but yes, yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing I noticed. Like, wow, each person is talking, whereas at a regular dinner party of, let's say, 10 people, you wouldn't have one person talking, then they stop, somebody else comes in with their comments, and then they stop. That's not real life, right? So it can be, there's pros and cons to that for sure. But yeah, so just to bring back to your initial question, I do think there is some benefits to that. We can get into the dating aspect of that as well. But I think like navigating isolation, solitude, isolation, they're kind of two ways to look at it, right? But being by yourself as a single person, man or woman, is something to navigate. And making sure the self-care, the mental, emotional, physical habits that supported us before COVID are even more important now.
I want to add in something too.
Yeah, please, Vanessa. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what COVID is also offering as an opportunity around dating and relationship building is to get out of the preconceived beliefs of, I can't date long distance. I'm not interested in meeting somebody in another county or another state or province or country. I think it's expanding people's ability to get outside of their box, to be able to form or find a connection with someone that might be more well matched than they might believe, and to kind of get over some of those belief systems or those ideas that they had pre-COVID about, meeting somebody online or long distance, somebody that they can't connect with. I think there's so many opportunities that that COVID is offering in terms of how we can relationally connect, and that also includes dating, that I think prior to this we might have left on the table.
So you're really looking at this through an optimistic lens. Like there are opportunities that are existing, that I think that's a great reframe, because I think a lot of people are looking at what is missing or what is lost, but I would love to hear you expand on the opportunities that are coming about. So essentially what I hear you saying is it's giving people an opportunity to meet people who they might not otherwise meet. And then also, if I hear you correctly, it feels like maybe find things in a dynamic with people that they might overlook if they were to meet them.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, and we can talk about our own story when we do that, but like when you're dating, just virtually or distancing wise, whatever you want to call it.
And you guys met distance-wise.
Yeah, we did.
That's correct, right? Yeah. Okay.
And the beauty of it is that it takes the physical, hormonal, sexual piece off the table, and forces you to focus on the other things, conversation, value, connection, communication, all of those things that are ultimately just as, if not more important, in a long-term partnership, right? And so,
absolutely.
And then, the sex and intimacy will definitely come into place, and then that becomes a thing to navigate as a dating couple. But I think it's really important, and allows for you to have that foundation in place and explore that. And also, that also means that getting good at those skills is important too, right? So the people that maybe were good at just swiping and messaging and maybe hooking up, that's not going to cut it in a world where you're having long form conversations one-to-one with somebody over FaceTime or Zoom.
Right.
And so
you
like,
can't rely, if you've got some game that allows you to maybe make some things happen in the physical world, that through your body connection and through your maybe your sexual kind of vibration that you can put off in person. It's actually forcing people to actually go deeper, is what I hear.
Totally.
Agreed. And you know, also when you're going out on dates in real life, there's a lot of distraction and stimulation that when you're sitting on the phone or on a video chat, you're not going to have. You know, if you're out doing some sort of an activity, there are ways to connect and you can keep things a little bit more surface. It's easier to not have to, or to potentially avoid going deeper in conversation. But when you're sitting, you know, on the phone for an hour or 2 hours, or you're on a video chat and you're in a room, there's nothing else to be focusing at or looking at or getting distracted by. You're focusing on that other person. And eventually the conversations are going to start to venture into a different type of territory, you know, the emotional parts of your being, you know, your beliefs, your values. Not that those things don't happen in real life, but this time is forcing people, I believe, to really level up their communication and how they are relationally connecting with other people. It's forcing us to sometimes look at some of the patterns we have in dating and to start being more strategic around looking at what works and what doesn't. Because if I'm really in this to find my, you know, well-matched person that I can build a relationship with, it's nice to have all those activities, and that time is going to come. I'm sure at some point it will come in the future. But for now, you know, like Jeffrey said, I think, you know, for us even, Jeffrey and I met over Facebook, 7 years ago, 6 years ago. We had known each other prior to that on Facebook. But when we started to connect, one of the things that was so clear to me was how important, especially looking back, those first 2-3 months were of us virtually connecting over Skype calls. And we would have these long Skype calls, you know, throughout the week, you know, connecting with each other. And then he came to visit me. And what that really did was it put all like that sexual, physical intimacy to the side and really had us connect as people. You know, are we compatible emotionally, mentally, spiritually, even energetically? And then our last piece was the physical piece, which came afterwards. And I mean, here we are all these years later. And it was one of the most easeful experiences I'd ever had in dating. And I was one of those people who was like, I'm never going to long distance date again, because I had done it in the past and it didn't work out and it was hard. But when you have the tools and you know how to utilize those tools, you know, it doesn't matter if it's long distance or in person, you know, those skills can start to translate and can create a really beautiful, you know, potential partnership with someone.
You know, I was just thinking of, related to that, is it reminds me of those letters that used to be written, I guess they still are, written between like a spouse or a girlfriend or whatever who is at home, and their spouse who is off at war somewhere, or off at sea, or somewhere, you know, in another country. And there's communication that happens over months or maybe even years between them, these letters. And it requires a different type of relationship with oneself and a different type of relationship with one's partner, where it's actually requiring a level of patience that we have grown accustomed to not having that kind of patience in relationships. And we have also grown accustomed to sort of a dating world where it's kind of like, well, you know, we swipe. If this person doesn't meet every criteria that we're looking for, we keep on swiping. We go out on a date and maybe have some sort of superficial conversation. And if they say something that we're a little bit irritated by, then we don't even bother looking deeper. We'll just kind of go on to the next one. Let's just keep on swiping left until we find that perfect match, which may never come, and actually probably never actually will come. It's pretty rare to actually find that like soulmate level match who you really are connected to. But However, that was never really a focus in the past, and people would cultivate relationships over long distance because there was more patience that was just naturally part of the culture. And so part of what I hear you saying is that there's this healthy patience that's required, where it forces people to, you know, if you're going to get bored, well, you're going to get actually bored a lot more easily and because there's not going to be any sort of any kind of prize at the end, like a sexual prize that sort of keeps a boring relationship going or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you, instead of getting that periodic little stimulation that is going to keep that thing going, it actually, it forces you to go, okay, if I'm going to show up again on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, it's going to require a level of patience and commitment to keep doing that. That's part of what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, and the thing,
interesting. That's really fascinating. That's really cool.
Because the thing is too is like, I always say this with clients, coaching clients, is like, take sex out of the equation, what is left?
Yeah.
Like if you take sex out of this equation, the hot, hormones, the chemistry, all that stuff, what remains, that's going to show whether you have a relationship foundation or not. Right?
Isn't that the truth?
Right? And then you can have, there's nothing wrong with, a purely sexual chemistry-based connection, but that's not really, who we work with in terms of who our clients are looking for partnership. But it's a good testament, and this is a perfect time to date with that explicit context built in, right? Yes, and then yes, you can be sexual and flirty over Skype or Zoom or text or whatever, that's fine, yes. But it's not the same as being, in the person's presence. And so I think it's a perfect time. And then also there's an opportunity to be more, especially as a man, if you're one of those people that thinks you want, that believes in treating women and paying for the dates and all that. Cool. Well, now you have the chance to experiment with maybe a wider range of types of women that you normally would be open to, because now all it is just a FaceTime kind of thing. You could do like a 20-minute, 30-minute date, and then it's low risk in the sense.
Right. You don't have to worry as much about unintended pregnancies, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then the other thing is too, is like you can, there's less of a, I would say you can even implement this FaceTime video dating after this is all over, hopefully soon, right? Like, why not build in, a video chat for 20 minutes to kind of see what the vibe is and the energy is before.
So you're suggesting people maybe embrace this as more of a permanent way of life, essentially.
I mean, in the initial phases of dating, it could be, yeah. I mean, I know that certain apps, I forget which ones, if it was Bumble or Hinge, that were already implementing video chat features before this happened. I think, a year ago or less than a year ago, there were some, apps that are already including this as a feature in their app. So they were kind of already hip to the scene of, hey, maybe there's a benefit to us seeing each other face to face without, so there's obviously challenges, but I think those are some of the benefits that we've seen in clients and in our single friends around the dating world. And also just I want to preface too, the basics of dating haven't changed, right? The logistics of, how do you meet people? Okay, well, maybe we're going to be more towards the app realm right now, and it'll go back to in person, or our informal network of colleagues and friends, right? There's that still reality, but also the foundation of communication, connection, masculine, feminine polarity, sexual, consent, all of these things. Like nothing really has changed in those realms. It's more the initial pieces, right? So just want to preface that people think like, oh, it's all upside down right now, and it is to a degree, and it can feel that way. And just like one of in the training that we're doing with men, it's the foundation still needs to be there.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just about like, let me find what's the hottest app now to meet someone. What's the best things to say? That's going to get you so far. But again, similar to what I said earlier about take sex out of the equation, right? Take the fun first couple dates out of the equation. What's left after that, right? Because it's easy to put on a show, put on a front, but like once you do get to the in-person dating, which is obviously the goal, who you are as a person at your foundation is going to be what shows up, right? So you're still working on that as a man, as a woman, So I just want to preface that like we may want to get seduced by like, oh, what's the latest things to do to like hack my dating life during COVID,
Yeah.
which is, you know, a valid question, and it's not going to substitute or replace doing the work that's always been necessary.
Well, speaking of that, and speaking to what you were just mentioning earlier about the two of you creating this program together, which I think is awesome that you're both creating a program together around training men. Vanessa, I'd be curious from your perspective, what men most need to know about dating, both in this particular time and just in general. Like Jeffrey says, a lot of all these principles are pretty much the same. It's a different format, but the same principles. And so what are your perspectives that you add as a woman that you would really like to share, that is part of your focus, and what you would like to see in terms of the evolution of men approaching dating from a more conscious perspective?
I really appreciate that. Yeah, you know, and I have clients that I've been, you know, doing this work actively with. And, you know, one of the things that really stands out for me is, and it can for men and women, but if I'm just speaking to men, it's don't be afraid to slow down. I think that we're in a culture that, now that doesn't mean, you know, slowing down to the point where, you know, the relationship doesn't evolve, but really slowing down and getting to know each other. I think one of the things that people miss are yellow flags for both men and women. Yellow flags, red flags, when things are speeding up and there's so much intensity and there's so much fantasy that's been built on an initial connection, a lot of the more important fundamental, like Jeffrey's saying, foundational items, you know, that make someone who they are, like their values and their needs and their desires, they all start to kind of just get put on the shelf, as I see a lot of people acquiescing to making the relationship or the early stages of the relationship work. And if it's going too fast, it's very easy to not have boundaries. It's very easy to let things slide. It's very easy to get caught up in this fantasy that we build. You know, I see a lot of men and women too putting people on pedestals. And then as soon as they get triggered or something doesn't go right, now all of a sudden that person's made wrong. Well, if you put them on a pedestal, then eventually that pedestal is going to fall, because nobody can stay up on that. Nobody is perfect. We all have flaws. We all have, you know, areas of improvement and growth. And in the slowing down, it's easy to really, it's much easier for you to just track what's happening internally for you, because, you know, men and women, we have intuition, we have emotions. And the more that we slow down and we breathe and we feel and we notice, oh, when she said that or he said that, that kind of made me feel a little strange. What is that? I want to explore that within myself. So I think slowing down is a huge piece, and removing the fantasy, because when you're speeding up, it's very easy to get caught up in the hormones and the excitement.
Yes,
oh my gosh, we're so much alike. Are you my person? Are we gonna have babies? When are we gonna plan our wedding? And that can actually start to really create a breakdown.
Right.
That's meant to happen, it will.
Yeah.
You know, if it's meant to unfold, you know, the timing is going to allow for that to happen. So
I think that's
like, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I did go ahead. I was just going to say, I think what you're saying is just so resonating. It's incredibly wise. And I think, you know, I think there's a fear that that people have that, oh, if this isn't going to work, then, you know, I better just keep on dreaming and convince myself and try to convince this person that I'm connecting with of the dream. Otherwise, maybe it's not going to work. And so I'm totally relating with what you're saying. I'm getting it. I want to hear more, but I think that's right on. Now, as you're saying, slow down for men. So part of what I'm hearing you say is men are having this kind of while we're making some generalizations, I think men maybe have more of a tendency to sort of go full steam ahead, like try to get to that goal, that accomplishment. It's like, let's make this happen, create certainty, create the structure, so forth.
Yeah.
And what I hear you saying is that women have that feeling sense that men sometimes override, and that connection to the body and the sensory world. Is that what you're referring to, slowing down so that you can really be in your feeling sense, which is really uncomfortable for a lot of men.
Absolutely. And I think that, one of the things I tell all the men that I work with who are single and are dating is, this is an area to strengthen. Relationship is really a path. It's a journey. And, if you don't have the tools, you don't have the self-awareness, you don't have the skills developed, it's very easy to just be solely focused on the end result, whatever that might be. I'm going to marry this woman, or I'm going to make sure that this woman knows that I'm choosing her. But all kinds of other things are left on the wayside that's very hard to track when you don't have the tools, you don't have the awareness and the development within yourself to know that, oh, wow, there was a yellow flag over here in the first week, but I was so fixated on how sexy and beautiful this woman is, that took more precedence over, wow, that actually is not in alignment with my values, but I'm just going to, forget that I didn't hear that, and I'm just going to keep moving forward. It's like, you have to understand the purpose of relationship is to grow and to evolve. Yes. And, there is no perfect person. Like, we are coming together to work a lot of our wounds out from childhood and from our lives, and to develop more love and compassion for ourselves and for each other. So if you look at relationship as a path, as a journey, not just to have a certain outcome or to put a ring on a woman's finger or to make sure you've got a beautiful lady by your side, in this instance, it's like, it's also for your benefit to grow and to evolve in your purpose, in who you are as a man, in this lifetime. There's a gift there both ways for people. And I think that we sometimes forget that, or we don't know, because we were not taught these things growing up. Where did we ever get relational skills in elementary school or college or in any sort of program, unless you've been working on yourself, doing personal development? So, there's more I could say, of course, but I want to give a chance for Jeffrey too to
please, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I sum it up would be like, I think a lot of people, myself, had this pattern before Vanessa. It's like, we commit to the person too soon.
Yes.
Whereas I always, my thing is like, commit to the exploration before you commit to the person. So, so basically, in our case, it's, here's me, Jeffrey, and there's you, Vanessa. Let's put Vanessa and Jeffrey together and let's explore what this combination equals, versus Jeffrey and Vanessa equals we're together, we're meant to be. And then that's where the contortion comes in. We're like, in order to make this, just like in a mathematical equation, in order to make this actual equal, I have to contort something and you have to contort something. So let's prolong and slow down this exploration of each other. And it can be where, you can say, hey, let's seal the exits toward other people. Let's just commit to just each other. But just to be clear, we're committing to the exploration of what you and I are, rather than, we're boyfriend, girlfriend now from this point forward.
That's an important distinction. That's really, I like that you make that distinction, that there's still a benefit of sealing off the dynamic so that it allows you to actually feel more than you might be able to feel because if you're kind of just sort of half in and half out, that lack of commitment to the exploration can lead you to maybe not going as deep as you might otherwise go in the relationship. And this is great. This is a great conversation. Really good stuff. This is deep and powerful stuff. I'm really glad that we're touching on this. This is excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where, and I think there's room for dating multiple people in the early stages, right? But then at a certain point, certain people start to become louder in your awareness, right? There's more aliveness in a connection. There's more aliveness in how you show up around a certain woman or man versus other people. And so then you start to like, hey, well, maybe there's benefit to focusing on this one person for a period of time, eliminating the visual, energetic, emotional distraction that other people may come in, right? And there's maturity in that, right? There's a wisdom that comes from having to be able to make that decision. But yeah,
creating that container, creating that, it's like
yes,
whether it's in person or whether it's online, it's creating that container so that you can actually explore those deeper spaces. Now, something that's coming up for me as I hear you talking about this too, is the way in which sometimes those slowing down to feel that uncomfortable feeling of exploration without trying to create the certainty around it is going to create, it's going to create a lot of uncomfortable feelings, because it's like, oh, I can't lock this down. I don't know if this is a thing. I'm not sure, I'm not certain that this is a thing. And so now I have to feel all of the places inside of me where I try to seek certainty, where I try to seek comfort over exploration. And one thing that I'm wondering if you see this, certain people may be popping out of a relationship as soon as they start feeling uncomfortable, where it's like, okay, now it's like triggering some stuff in me. And does that mean that this person is not the right person, the right quote unquote person for me, because now I'm having to face some uncomfortable feelings? I would imagine that probably comes up in relationships that might otherwise develop in a healthy way, if those people were willing to slow down and feel that and stay with the uncertainty rather than try to seal the deal somehow mentally.
I mean, I'll speak, on that. It's like, I think that all comes down to leadership in the relationship and leadership in the exploration. So for example, like, to be thinking in advance before that moment, to know that moment will and may come up, and to have in advance some rules of engagement that you both agree to, right? Hey, it's expected that we're going to have disagreements, we're going to have fights, we're going to have triggered, we're going to have a wounding come up, that's going to be there to disrupt the, our connection. And how do we in advance want to show up?
Beautiful. Working all of that out in advance. Yeah.
So that way, because a lot of times I think we get blindsided, like you said, like, where's this side of you coming from? I never seen this side of you before, right? Is saying like, month 3 or 4 or 6 or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're blindsided and you react versus like, okay, well here, this is what we anticipated. And it's going to be messy. Like, you got to give yourself permission to be messy and clunky. But I think there's definitely value in having that proactive approach to conflict, disagreements, whatever turbulence comes in the relationship. That's the first thing. And then I think it is looking at having a support system, whether it's a coach or a therapist or a community or a men's circle or a women's circle, that can be a source of wisdom for you. And also I think there's also that are people in your life that are friends and supporters of the relationship. Right? Like, yes, they're supporting you individually, but like, hey, we're a stand for you guys to be together as long as, you guys are meant to be together. And we're going to help you navigate this. It is really important.
So in other words, sign up for the program you guys are offering, because it really, seriously, this is such important stuff. You guys are sharing some serious wisdom right now. And so I'm serious to anyone listening to this right now who is trying to navigate a relationship, anytime, but online, in person, whatever. Get connected with Jeffrey and Vanessa, and get the coaching you need, because this stuff, I know from personal experience. I've been through hell and back through relationships in the past because of not knowing the fundamentals, not knowing these setups, not knowing about boundaries, not having the awareness of how things can go south and what to do when they do, and how to establish boundaries in advance so I don't end up walking into my own pothole and that kind of thing. And so I think, what you guys are doing is so valuable for the world. And so, anyone listening to this who is wanting to learn how to date or relate better and find that partner who you can relate organically and authentically with, and navigate these potential pitfalls in a relationship, you need to get in touch with these guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
And I appreciate that first. Thank you. And then the other piece is it's like it's foundational, right? It's kind of like the wax on, wax off, right? Like we poo-poo that. I think our culture, at least in the coaching personal development world, has gotten really obsessed with hacks and fast tracking things,
shortcuts,
and it's the whole thing of like slow down to speed up. I think it's true. Like it's the and that's why we call it We've called the first phase in our men's program is foundation. Like set your foundation, and we call it that versus initially I think we called it preparation, but we don't want to have that mindset of I'm preparing, and then once I get the woman in my life I can stop preparing, I'm good. No, it's foundation, meaning in general if there is some turbulence in a relationship, check your foundation. Your physical, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, your community, your financial, your purpose, your career, your business. Are those things in place? And that will impact, what's impacted our relationship, early on is around like, my foundation was wobbly and I kind of ignored it in the being mesmerized by the beauty and the chemistry and all that stuff. It shoots you in the foot, or what's that word? It shoots you in the foot, or it comes to bite you in the ass. That's the better term.
Or you shoot yourself in the foot.
Or is it bite in the mouth or something? I don't know.
Shoot yourself in the ass. Bite yourself in the foot.
Yeah, it comes and gets you. Let's do that. But yeah, so that's kind of and it's not sexy. Same with you, like things that you teach around meditation and self-awareness and body awareness and breath work. Yeah, they're not because they're not always the sexiest thing, but like they do so much. Right.
Well, I like what you're just saying. It's not like you lay the foundation once and then you're good to go for the rest of your life. It's like that foundation takes regular maintenance day in and day out. So Vanessa, what do you see as the most common triggers that men experience in dating, and what would you suggest how would you suggest from a woman's perspective how they take on those triggers and navigate them?
Yeah, I think what I see commonly happening is a man wanting to fix and solve a problem for a woman when she's emotionally vulnerable or just needing space held or just wants to vent. And immediately man goes into fix-it mode. And then woman feels shut down because she's not actually feeling like her needs are really being met. And I always say this to the men that I work with, because I work with men and women. And I do, all kinds of work with them, including relational work when it's present. When a woman is in a vulnerable emotional state and she's not able to be held by the masculine in that moment, there's a few things there. I think a man has to know how to emotionally hold himself, as does a woman, because we have masculine and feminine energy within all of us.
Sure.
And so we have to know how to hold ourselves, but in the container of a relationship, we want to feel like we can go to the person, or as a woman, I want to go to Jeffrey, and sometimes just be able to cry and not feel like he needs to resolve anything for me in that moment, but just to have the space held. And that was one of the things I actually really, really deeply appreciated about Jeffrey. Was one of the first men I've ever met that could actually hold me in the feminine, energy and bigness of emotions that I could bring, because it can be a lot. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but he knew, yes, thank you, baby. But he knew how to hold all of that for me and not go in and fix it. Now, every so often we kind of,
pattern's still there.
The pattern's there and we rub up against it. But, from my female clients, this is something that I've heard quite often, is that they don't feel like when they're vulnerable or emotional, a man can really meet them in the depths of their emotion, or at least just be with her without feeling like, oh my God, this is too much, I need to check out and avoid or resist or, kind of go MIA on her, or go into this problem and, resolution mode when she's not open or ready for that. So I would say, this is a really important piece of work for men. Like, the deeper that you can hold yourself through your emotions, and I always say to clients, like, what's going on neck down? not just what's up here, what's happening next down, because all the solutions and the fixing, that's all happening up here. It's not actually happening in here, where you're really feeling and meeting your woman with where she's at in this moment. You're going to your head because that's the safest place for you to be, versus actually going in here and feeling the discomfort, or feeling the pain, or the resistance, or the whatever, the sadness, you know, whatever it might be. So
And
that's
by neck down, I assume you mean heart and solar plexus versus crotch.
Yes, like heart, you know, in
Yeah.
the AMP program, which I was one of the women facilitators one year, you know, I love the analogy of, you know, head, heart, and hips. And we want all of that. But in certain moments, I think as a feminine woman, you know, we also want to just feel like I don't have to just go to my girlfriend, you know, and cry or vent, you know, or the therapist. Like, I want to love to also just feel like it's safe for me to just lean into my partner, my husband, my boyfriend, you know, and just feel like he's got me and there's nothing to resolve here. Like, I'm a big girl. I know how to resolve things. And if I need you to help me resolve it, trust me enough to make that request and that ask from you to help me with that.
Boy, that's critical, huh? The difference between the automatic response of men to try to fix or resolve something, from actually checking in and seeing, well, is this even something that she wants even help with to begin with? And most likely, if there's no request there, then probably no. Probably just shut up and hold space. Just be steady. Do what you do well. Just be steady, be strong. Don't take it personally.
Exactly.
Just hold that energy and get that it's not about you, and just stay steady, stay strong, stay present, and don't retreat and don't react.
And I would add to this too, Sam, because everything you're saying is so spot on. It's also, you know, for a man who feels like, well, yeah, I don't know how to stand still in that moment. I don't know what that looks like or means to me right now. One of the most powerful questions we can ask is, what do you need in this moment? Or how can I support you right now?
Right.
And that opens up the sovereignty, the autonomy for your partner. And this is great for women too. This is not just for men. This is for men and women, because men need their emotional needs met as well. Yeah. And women can go into fix-it mode just as much as men can. But you asked from the feminine perspective for men in this question. So I'm speaking to that.
Yeah.
Those two questions are so powerful. I use them all the time with friends, with family, with him. Yeah. You know, and it really gives somebody the opportunity to say, you know what, I just need you to just be with me for this moment. Just let me cry. Or I need your help resolving this. Or I'm just going to vent right now and I just need you to be a sounding board, or whatever it might be. But
and I noticed there's a tone in your voice when you communicated, which was a tone of inquiry versus reaction, where those two, that could be taken two totally different ways, depending on if it's, what do you need right now versus what do you need right now? You know, which is the second would be a reactive tone, basically saying there's something wrong with you. I don't like it, you know, but the tone of inquiry is, you know, from a loving place. What do you need right now?
Yes.
You know,
great distinction, Sam. I
from
love that.
a genuine, authentic place of inquiry versus a place of reaction. Because if you're reacting, you're already on the wrong track.
Yeah. And the other thing I would add is, like, as a man, you can also share honestly and openly from yourself, like, hey, you know, I love you, honey, you know, and I want to support you, and I want to know, and I'm also feeling some anxiety and frustration, not knowing how, right? To be like, okay to share, like, it's okay to, like, admit, like, I think as men, we kind of have this idea, like, oh, I should know what to do. I want to know what to do all the time and have the right response and the right tool and the right advice. And to be okay and be like, hey, you know what? Like, I love you. You know, I hear you. You're in a frustrated place, and you know, I'm feeling unstable, uncertain in how to support you right now. And then kind of, so it's like almost like adding a layer to what you shared around, like, what's the best way to support you? And I'm scared that I'm you know, feeling, this is bringing up my own feelings of inadequacy, or, you know, being overbearing or not enough. You know, like, or my story.
But this requires
that's
tools
another
and
layer.
awareness, right?
Another layer of
Training.
self-awareness.
Yes, that requires that awareness. Now, Vanessa, in response to that, do you think that's something to work to try to figure out in the moment, or is that something to try to get a baseline communication around in advance so that you can kind of like, because maybe in that moment, she might not be able to tell you what she needs because she's going through the emotional reaction and she can't, it's like the logic is kind of on the back burner for a moment. And she might say something like, I need you to get away from me or something like that versus, actually communicating from a place of what she really needs. And so, and it seems like this, again, this is why it's so important to do the kind of work that you guys are doing, because it's like, it seems to me that's the sort of thing that you want to try to the best of your ability. And that this has come up now a few times over the course of this conversation, kind of figure out some of this stuff in advance so that you can kind of navigate it when it does happen in a way where it might not be totally graceful, but there's a chance that that reaction is so strong that you're not even going to get the right feedback when you ask that question, what do you need? And then, and if she says, I need you to get away from me right now, and then you take it personally that your honest, authentic inquiry was met with a reaction, then it could then offend the guy, and then they really then everything is lost. Then it's utter and complete chaos and reactivity with both people. So I think it just goes to reinforce the need to have these relational skills and to sort of take preventative measures to communicate in advance the types of structures essentially that work best because would you say, Vanessa, that a woman kind of generally understands the nature of her own emotional patterns when she is not in them and can maybe speak to them and sort of give the guy a general sense for how to hold space for her?
This is a tough one, because I'm going to say not really, not all the time. I think it also depends on really the emotional development and self-awareness that a woman has.
And relational experience.
And relational experience, I mean, I think it really goes both ways. I mean, doing this work for so long, it's not that women are more advanced than men. I actually don't buy that. Like, I can see that we've had more permission to be in our emotions as feminine beings. But I think where we are now, I don't think it's actually fair to say that, men are less aware than a woman is about their emotions. I think it really depends on her development. I think one of the things I see as a key issue for most people, and this is why the training that we're doing is, I think, so helpful and valuable, because it's training not just for dating, but it spills over into every other relationship in your life. And I mean, one of the areas that we've talked about is, I think the biggest breakdown comes in conflict. People are afraid of conflict. People do not know how to handle conflict. They don't know how to communicate through conflict. They avoid conflict. And this is just like a slow buildup of resentment and charge and trigger and needs not being met and things being stuffed down, and I think for men and women, I mean, a man cannot read a woman's mind or body all the time, even self-aware men, or men who've had a lot of experience being with women. And women can't expect
I can vouch for that.
Right? Like, women can't expect a man to know what, she's saying if she's not explicitly saying or asking for it. So, I think sometimes as humans, and what I've learned, through my own work and doing this work with so many people, is most of the time when we're in relationships and we get triggered and those wounds are met, we're actually dealing with the emotional capacity of what we were like as toddlers sometimes. Some of these childhood wounds come out as adults, and that's where we're operating from without actually knowing that.
Right. We
right?
think
So
that that's part of who our adult constitution. We think that that's
yes,
just part of who we
or
are,
that
but
person
it's
made
actually,
me
or
feel
that,
this way.
yes. Well, that's the easiest thing to do when we're feeling something triggered in us, right? Is to go into have a reflection and then go into a projection, and that person
Yes.
is responsible for us
Oh,
feeling
yeah.
this way in the moment, where what you actually may be feeling may have nothing to do with that person in this moment. It might have
Yeah.
something to do with something that happened to you when you were 4 years old that never got processed properly.
Exactly.
This is very real stuff.
It's rarely about what's happening on the surface in that moment versus it's if it's like hysterical, I think they say it's history, right?
If
There's
it's
like this,
hysterical, often it's historical.
it's often, yeah, something like that. I mean, I don't like
Absolutely.
the word hysterical because I don't like, you know,
yeah.
I'm thinking that when we're emotional or angry or we're hysterical, I think that there's probably a better term for that, but that actually rings very true that when we are emotional,
Absolutely.
a lot of it is historical, and it's not always,
Absolutely.
well, you didn't take the garbage out, or, you know, why did you not pick up the phone when I was calling you 3 times? How could you do that? You know, it's rarely about what's happening on the surface.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Which goes to just speak to how important it is to not take each other's stuff personally, and just
And that's a
really,
tough one when you're
that
triggered,
is,
right?
And that's
boy,
where
oh boy, sure is, especially
Yeah.
when it's all being projected at you, and then you
Oh,
start to
yeah.
project back, and you're defending yourself. You think that
Yeah.
you're defending your integrity as a human being, but what you're actually doing is you're communicating from your own wounds, and it's like, and then you've got a real mess on your hands.
and I think the other piece too to add is like, you know, I'm a big fan, and I would venture to say we are a big fan of. There's these best practices like commonalities and fundamental kind of perspectives on things. You know, masculine, feminine. You know, introvert, extrovert. You know, all these different lenses to look at relationships, life, individuals from. And so there's like there's the macro, and then there's the micro. And I think a relationship needs to be looked at from both. So, for example, like, you know, how does masculine and feminine show up in our relationship is going to be unique to us.
Yeah.
Whereas like how it might show up in you and your partner is different.
Sure.
And so I think that's where I think slowing down and having ongoing exploration, ongoing self-awareness, ongoing like, hey, you know, I know we learned this in the workshop and we did it this way, but like I think we should modify it this way because that's that's better for us, right? So things like that I think are really important to know. Like, there's the macro best practices, but then like making sure that you customize it to yourself.
Yes.
And to your partner. I think
This stuff is all so important. We could talk about it for hours and we would still just be scratching the surface, which is why I encourage anyone who's listening who wants to learn more about dating effectively, relating effectively, and building a fulfilling, sustainable relationship, a healthy, sustainable, authentic relationship, to get in touch with you guys. So where can people find out more about your programs, and how can they get in touch with you guys?
You can go first.
Yeah, I mean, you can basically, my website, jeffreyplatts.com, JEFFREYPLATTS.com. And then you'll see links there for the program.
Speaking
and
of slowing down, do that a little slower. JEFFREYPLATTZ,
Yeah.
2 T's before the Z, right?
With S.
Oh, S, I'm sorry.
JEFFREYPLATTS as in Sam at S and Sam .com. Yeah, and so and then also you can look me up on Facebook and Instagram. But you know, I have a.
Tell them about the Facebook group.
Oh yeah, we have a Facebook group for single men in their 30s and 40s that are looking for a partnership and are ready for that. It's called Meet and Keep Your. What is it? It's Meet and Keep
Your well-matched woman.
Meet and Keep Your Dream Woman. It's dating upgrades for single men in their 30s and 40s. It's a long name. If you just search for me, you'll find it.
Just enter like 3/4 of what he just said and you'll find it.
Yeah, just search for
We gotta
Jeffrey.
consolidate that. It'll catch your name. But so that's the best way. Facebook and Instagram and website. And Vanessa?
Yeah, so I have a website as well, and it's a little bit longer than Jeffrey's. So it's Vanessa, VANESSA PETRONELLI.com. and very active on Facebook and Instagram. I have a YouTube channel that's getting built up, and my podcast is going to be released soon. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, and you can just contact me through there if there's anything that you want to talk about, or get in touch with us about our training.
Awesome, guys. Well, I thank you so much for being on today, and I really thank you for what you're doing, the purpose that you are following, and the incredible work that you're doing in the world. It's so,
Thank you. Thank you for having us. This is
Thank
really,
you so much.
you're a really good interviewer. I really
Excellent
appreciate
interviewer.
your presence and tracking and curiosity. Just want to acknowledge you for that. It's been fun on our end too.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Okay, talk soon.